Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners, as well as regular radio listeners, as well as YouTubers. I hope everyone is happy today and having a good day. I am in Arizona still, and I am the Sane Environmentalist. And I've recently, I don't know, maybe it's the time of year or something, but I've recently started to develop rather I don't want to call it a negative outlook, but just the evidence that I'm seeing leads me to a conclusion, however, that maybe humanity is indeed getting ready to be a thing of the past, along with many other of our fellow species on this planet. You know, when you think about just the short-term impacts of some of the stuff we're doing to the planet, you know, and now with this whole geoengineering thing, that, in my mind, calls into question literally everything that they've ever told me about global warming. I would feel like global warming is a given, and this is the climatic change rate and all this, but now I know that they've been artificially engineering the climate on a global scale. And that has been going on since 95 or so, I would say, that they've been actively, they call it geoengineering, they call it solar radiation management. But the whole idea is you put particles in the air that reflect sunlight back into space. And when you reflect it back into space, it doesn't hit the ground, and then you let them clear off at night, and it creates further radiant heat loss, thereby creating a heat sink. And, pardon me, the only unfortunate thing about this technique is that it requires large amounts of heavy metals, including aluminum and barium and strontium, and microparticleized, micro-type little pieces of aluminum, barium, strontium, and sulfur dioxide, as well as, I guess that would be sulfuric acid. So what they're doing right now is they're loading airplanes up, and there's, I believe, and I could be wrong on this, there is a um, center fuel tank in most planes, and then the wings have their own fuel tank. And I think what they do is they go from the wing fuel tanks or the center, either way, from takeoff and landing with regular, normal, high-octane jet fuel. And then once they get up to altitude, then they switch over to this other tank. And this other tank is a mixture of jet fuel and sulfuric acid and aluminum particles and barium and strontium particles and other chemicals. And they inject that into the fuel stream of the jet. And that's how it makes those big, pretty contrails, chemtrails, some people call them. You know, and as soon as I stopped calling them chemtrails, all of a sudden I started to learn a lot more about them. It's kind of an eyes wide shut thing. It's like you would think that you get it and you got it, but you don't have it, you know, unless your eyes are open. So at any rate, it's kind of led me to believe that, okay, so since what their claim is that we could extend the amount of time by years that we have before we would have to reduce our carbon dioxide output and still not see any significant temperature rise in the environment. And they've been doing this since the 90s, easily, probably before that. But think about it. So if they have been literally controlling the climate since the 90s, then where would the rebound, if they'd stop, where would the rebound come from? Where would it end up at? Because, you know, you always have a rebound effect in nature. You know, when your system gets out of alignment and it triggers back to the normal, it'll rebound past normal for a while. So basically, we've been lied to about what the true status of the global warming situation is. You know, we haven't seen a whole lot of warming, and I wonder, is that because they've been geoengineering so hard all over the planet? I have to say probably there's something to that. You know, the governments of the world seem intent on extending the amount of time we have before we can decide to become environmentally friendly. My only issue with that is that in the meantime, we're going to build up and build up and build up this bubble of carbon dioxide and hazy, cloudy skies that will eventually have to be contended with. And then what are we going to do? It's just really sad. It really is. I have a huge, and please pardon all the harumps and stuff, I have a huge upper respiratory tract infection. I've had it for the last 2 weeks since they did this spraying. It was a huge spraying. The entire sky was clouded over and hazy for like 2 days, and you could just see them laying them down side by side in a checkerboard pattern. So yeah, my lungs are not good. I don't feel good. I don't feel sharp, for the lack of a better word. I feel like my brain is on mute. And I believe that this is chemical poisoning. You know, it's from aluminum, barium, and strontium that I'm inhaling that are coming down through the air column. And I wish, you know, I actually posted a YouTube video of some people in Kingman, Arizona, which is about 60 miles from where I am right now, who got together as a community and demanded of the the state of Arizona that they address this issue with the basic blanketing of the skies, or blanketing the skies with these big, giant, hazy contrails. You know, you see a little tiny plane and it puts out this gigantic plume behind it. Looks almost like a space shuttle launch or something. to the amount of fuel that's being burned, even if every bit of fuel that was being burned was converted somehow to a particle, it still wouldn't be that big. And so that you can see, it's obvious that they're injecting something into the atmosphere. High altitude injection. So all that stuff, however, does fall out. And the last time it happened was about the 27th of December. And for like 2 or 3 days straight, they were relentless in the skies above me. Relentless. There was, the whole, you see it, geoengineeringwatch.com website, Dane Weington, she'll look at some of the pictures, that's the skies I was looking at here. And everybody picked up this upper respiratory crap, phlegm, that's just so hard to deal with. And so it's so hard to talk through as well. So please forgive me again. I only do this radio show 2 days a week, and I try to do the best that I can do. I did notice I did a video about chemtrails, and and when it got uploaded to YouTube, there was literally as many dislikes as views plus 2 likes. So there's something going on there. I don't know why they don't want to hear about this stuff, they don't want to have to consider the fact that if they are doing this, what do they call it? Solar radiation management, or SRM is the code word for it. So when they do this SRM, you can pump more and more and more CO2 into the lower atmosphere without increasing the temperature. Enough particulates, and especially sulfuric acid particles in the atmosphere, and they reflect away so much of the heat from the sun. It's not even funny. I've seen it here where it was a warm day, the sun felt hot, and then they started doing that, and they overclouded the sun, and all of a sudden the sun didn't feel hot anymore. It was like kind of warm, and the temperature did drop. The whole place got cold right after that. And now they haven't sprayed for a few days, and the temperatures are starting to rebound quite nicely. Today I think we're looking at they're going to be in the low 80s, maybe even in the desert of Arizona, where I'm at right now. Let me do a quick search on the weather and see. So I wanted to kind of today talk about, are we over the brink? Are we? Oh, and it's going to be 75 here today. As a species, have we pushed our planet to the point of no return already? And I pulled together a few pieces that I could find. This one is from grist.org, GRIST, in their climate and energy section. And it's titled, "We're About to Push the Earth Over the Brink, a New Study Finds." There's a new scientific paper in the Journal of Nature called "Approaching a State Shift in Earth's Biosphere." In the sane world, it would be front page news. This is from the abstract. Localized ecological systems are known to shift abruptly and irreversibly from one state to another when they are forced across critical thresholds. Here, we review evidence that the global ecosystem as a whole can react in the same way and is approaching a planetary scale critical transition as a result of human influence. As example of past global state shifts, the authors cite the Cambrian explosion, a conversion of the global ecosystem from one based almost solely on microbes to one based on complex multicellular life, which took a comparatively brief 30 million years, the Big Five mass extinctions, and the last glacial-interglacial transition, which started about 14,000 years ago. The difference today is that beings are generating forcings, influences on biophysical systems of unprecedented power and at an unprecedented rate. These forcings include human population growth with attendant resource consumption, habitat transformation and fragmentation, energy production and consumption, and climate change. The authors emphasize that all these forcings far exceed in both rate and magnitude the forcings evident at the most recent global scale shift, the last interglacial transition. This write-up from Wired adds some context. Human activity now dominates 43% of Earth's land surface and affects twice that area. 1/3 of all available freshwater water is diverted to human use. 1/3 of all available fresh water is diverted to human use. A full 20% of the Earth's net terrestrial primary production, the sheer volume of life produced on land every year, is harvested for human purposes. So we use 20% of Earth's net terrestrial primary production, which is every bit of land, everything that's created that is a resource. The average temperature will likely be higher by 2070 and at any point in human evolution. Humanity's footprint now covers Earth. We're shaping the biosphere in our image. So, what such a global state means? What does this mean? There's no way to know for sure. Given the number of systems interacting in unpredictable ways, we can learn only from history. On a time scale most relevant to biological forecasting, today, biotic effects observed in the shift from the last glacial to the present interglacial, including many extinctions, drastic changes in species distributions, abundances and diversity, and the emergence of novel communities, new patterns of gene flow trigger new evolutionary trajectories. But the time since has long passed for evolution to compensate for extinctions. At a minimum, these kinds of effects would be expected from a global state shift forced by present drivers, not only in human-dominated regions, but also in remote regions, not now heavily occupied by humans. Indeed, such changes are already underway. Given that it takes hundreds of thousands to millions of years for evolution to build diversity back up to pre-crisis levels after our major extinction episodes, increased rates of extinctions are indeed of particular concern, especially because global and regional biodiversity today is generally lower than it was 20,000 years ago. And as a result of this last planetary shift, it's possible to be too substantial on the ecosystem and the services required to sustain human population. Although the ultimate effects of changing biodiversity and species compositions are still unknown, if critical thresholds of diminishing returns in ecosystem service were reached over larger areas at the same time global demands increase, widespread social unrest, economic instability, and loss of human life could result. How close are we to such a global state shift? One way to conceptualize it is to visualize the percentage of the Earth's terrestrial ecosystem that have seen local shifts. The $6 gajillion question is, what percentage of local ecosystems have to see a state shift before a tipping point is reached and the Earth as a whole enters a state shift. It's impossible to say for sure, say the authors, but landscape scale studies and theory suggest that the critical threshold may lie between 50% and 90%, although it could be lower owing to synergies between imminent global forcings. We're on track to hit 50% in about 10 to 15 years. Then we enter the quote-unquote danger zone. Then we enter the danger zone? Come on. Facing an uncertain but looming shift in the global conditions never witnessed by human civilization. This reinforces the conclusions of a seminal 2009 study in Nature on our proximity to border planetary boundaries. This is from the study's conclusion. Humans have already changed the biosphere substantially, so much so that some may argue for recognizing the time in which we live as now geologic epoch, the Anthropocene. So they're creating a new geologic epoch. They're calling it the Anthropocene. Comparison to the present extent of planetary change with the characterization of past global scale state shifts and the enormous global forcings we continue to exert. These suggest that another global climate state shift is highly plausible within decades to centuries, if it has not already been initiated. As a result, the biological resources we take for granted at present may be subject to rapid and unpredictable transformation within a few human generations. Think about what that's saying right there. What that's saying is that when you reach this tipping point, wherein you start seeing a cascading failure rate amongst systems, because the Earth is just like any other organism, really. You know, it has its systems that it has that keep it functioning, and they all work in balance and harmony. And when they're out of harmony and balance, then there's issues happen. You know, and the Earth has a certain type of immune system where the climate can change and kill stuff off, or, you know, the weak won't make it. But within a few human generations, that's like 30 or 40 years, it could all just crash. That's what the study's saying. You know, and we know that, and that's really the worst part of it, is that we understand this intrinsically. Yet, we are somehow convinced of our own grandness and of the fact that we, as a species, will just always be here and we'll be okay no matter what because of our technology. And yeah, I'll give you that. I will give you that. If there's anything that will salvage humanity, it is our technology. You know, our technology will allow us to build methods to survive at least part of us, you know, while the rest of humanity redevelops or something else happens. But, yeah, our technology is the key to not only our demise, but our future survival. So if our technology continues, then we will be successful overall. But I think we're going to have to leave this planet to really reach our potential completely. You know, I think that the somehow we're a mistake. You know, just the fact that we are the only species on the planet which is not in balance with every other species. We're completely alien to this planet. The only thing that makes us compatible really is the fact that we're able to get our sustenance and breathe the atmosphere. You know, but we have to build homes and clothes and roads and bridges and cars. You know, all that stuff is necessary for us as a species to continue to exist. So, you know, if you take away all of the electricity, roads, cars, and hospitals, you know, and farms, you're going to lose a big piece of humanity right along with it. Now think about that. Think about how much of our existence is really determined and based on our technology. You know, if it wasn't for filtered water and, excuse me, I'm sorry. If it wasn't for filtered water and purified food, refrigeration, the ability to cook, you know, we would not be nearly where we are today. You know, it's our technology that has set us apart, that has moved us above and beyond and separate from and to every other species. So, you know, that is our gift, and maybe that is as well our curse. I don't really know. But I do know that we're destroying this planet. And I do know that there is a very, very good chance that we've already pushed it over the brink. You know, and how sad that is. You know, not only for us, but also for all the other species, which will never be able to make it, will never be able to finish their evolutionary process. You know, because we got somehow out of whack with the rest of the system. I don't know how else to explain it. I do wish that we would quit spraying the skies with this crap, though. Seriously. You know, today it's not so bad, and in the last few days I've noticed the skies have been pretty clear here in Arizona. All the planes are laying down normal contrails, you know, that last for a little bit and then go away. And so that's a relief, at least on some level. But they'll be at it again after a while, you know. They probably have to gauge it on how many ER visits they have or something like that. But, yeah, solar radiation management is backwards. You know, we're going to create a huge bubble effect wherein we have an almost poisonous level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And we're able to keep the temperature under control despite the poisoning. And we're going to call that okay. We're going to go, well, I'm not hot. Are you hot? No, I'm not hot. Well, I guess we're okay then. So there's no precedent for much of what we're doing here. And we have no idea if we could survive it, much less thrive in it, what we're creating. And even if we could prosper through it, whether we want to wipe out most of the other species on this earth is a question. Here's what this one author recommended. Anticipating biological surprises on global as well as local scales, therefore, has become especially crucial to guiding the future of the global ecosystem and human societies. Guidance requires not only scientific work that foretells and ideally helps to avoid the negative effects of critical transitions, but also society's willingness to incorporate expectations of biological instability into strategies for maintaining human well-being. So that phrase, incorporate expectations of biological instability into strategies for maintaining human well-being implies a transformation in how humans think, plan, and behave. That is hard to get your head around. Humans have been living as if biophysical resources are infinite for so long that we only have the faintest clue of what it might look like to do otherwise. The time that we can safely make such a transition, however, is running out. These are not normal times. Here's another one. This is from the Washington Post. And it's from their morning mix, June 22nd, 2015. Earth is on the brink of a sixth mass extinction, scientists say, and it's humans' faults. A vast chunk of space rock crashes into the Yucatan Peninsula, darkening the sky with debris and condemning 3/4 of the Earth's species to extinction. A convergence of continents disrupts the circulation of the oceans, rendering them stagnant and toxic to everything that lives there. Vast volcanic plateaus erupt, filling the air with poisonous gas. Glaciers subsume the land and lock up the oceans in acres of ice. These are 5 times in the past that the Earth has been struck by these kind of cataclysmic events. One so severe and swift in geologic terms that they obliterated most living things before they ever had a chance to adapt. Now, scientists say the Earth is on the brink of a 6th mass extinction event. Only this time, the culprit isn't a massive meteor impact or a volcanic explosion or the inexorable drifting of inexorable drifting of continents. It's humans. We are moving into another one of these events that could easily ruin the lives of everybody on the planet, Stanford biologist Paul Ehrlich said in a video created by the school. In a study published in the Journal of Science Advances, biologists found that the Earth is losing mammal species 20 to 100 times the rate of the past extinctions that are happening so fast that they could rival the event that killed the dinosaurs in as little as 250 years. Given the timing, the unprecedented speed of the loss, and decades of research on the effects of pollution, hunting, and habitat loss, they assert that human activity is responsible. Extinctions is very obvious, and it's in our hands. Palmer, a biologist at the University of Florida, wrote in an email to the Washington Post. Since 1900 alone, 69 mammal species are believed to have gone extinct, along with about 400 other types of vertebrates. Evidence for species loss among non-vertebrate animals and other kinds of living things is much more difficult to come by. The researchers say there is little reason to believe that the rest of the life on Earth is faring any better. This rapid species loss is alarming enough, according to the study's authors, that it could be just the beginning. We can confidently conclude that the modern extinction rates are exceptionally high, and they are increasing, and that they suggest a mass extinction underway. If the currently elevated extinction pace is allowed to continue, humans will soon, in as little as 3 human lifespans, be deprived of many biodiversity benefits. The Science Advances studies is not the first to propose that die-offs caused by human activity are now on par with fatal cataclysms of millennia past. In 1998, the American Museum of Natural History poll of 400 biology experts found that 70% believe the Earth is in the midst of one of its fastest mass extinctions, one that threatens the existence of humans as well as millions of species we rely on. In his 2003 book, The Future of Life, noted Harvard biologist E.O. Wilson calculated the Earth would lose half of its higher life forms by 2010 if the current rate of human disruption continued. Scores of scientific studies have sought to bolster that claim, offering various evidence of current die-offs and predicting future ones, and many more have contributed to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's Red List, which keeps a bleak accounting of the extinction risk for tens of thousands of species. Let me look at that real quick, if I can. Slow to load page. There we go. Wow, okay. And this is from IUCN.org. But apparently there is a list of species here. I'll have to investigate this page more. So, it's true that throughout history, extinctions have happened for comparatively mundane reasons, even without the asteroid impact or humans disrupting it. Species are always dying out. The unfit, in Darwin's terminology, are being replaced. Scientists estimate that 99% of the species that ever existed no longer do. It's a routine part of life on Earth. What's happening now, the researchers say, is not routine. To prove how extraordinary the losses of the past 114 years have been, the authors of the new study used data from the IUCN Red List to calculate modern extinction rates and compare that number to the background or routine rates of extinction. To counter claims and that their research might be exaggerated or alarmist, the authors of this Science Advances study assumed a fairly high background rate of 2 extinctions per 10,000 vertebrate species each century, or 2 species per million each year, a metric known as the E divided by MSY, based on the fossil record. Most commonly used estimates are much lower, typically between 0.01 and 0.1 MSY. So, under normal conditions, this assumed background rate means that Earth should have seen 9 vertebrate extinctions since 1900. 9, count them. Those species, in the vertebrate and animals in particular, because those species have been subject to the most thorough convergence status assessments. But species these days are not living under normal conditions. The biologists say forests are vanishing, animals are hunted to their extinction for their tusks and teeth and fur. Toxins are leaching into streams and lakes and in the ground beneath us. The global climate is changing, and habitats around the world are changing with them. And as part of the mass extinctions, even the fit have been unable to adapt. So hold on, I'm scrolling down here, a bunch of ads. Based on IUCN lists of species that have been declared extinct in the wild and possibly extinct, species that haven't been seen in the wild for years, but whose loss hasn't been confirmed, 468 more vertebrates have died, but since 1900 than should have. That translates to an extinction rate 53 times the rate of baseline levels and the high background extinction rate, and more than 100 times the rate that most biologists use. Even using a highly conservative calculation that includes only 199 vertebrate species, definitively declared extinct, the rate of vertebrate species loss is 22 times higher than baseline. Though these extinctions are happening much faster than usual, they're not yet comparable to the Big Five mass extinctions, commonly recognized as the worst in Earth's history. The losses in the past century account for about 1% of the roughly 40,000 known vertebrate species, a statistic that pales in comparison to the levels of destruction seen during previous mass extinction events. Even in the least of them, between 60 and 70% of species were killed off during the Permian event about 250 million years ago, known as the Great Dying. That number was more than 90%. But the biological biodiversity we're seeing now could trigger even more catastrophic species loss within a few years. Ecological communities are composed of many interacting parts, and there are potential tipping points in these communities where if you lose too many species or lose species in a particularly important part of the ecosystem, the whole ecosystem may rapidly degrade or change state. If die-outs continue at current rates, the current extinction event could reach Big Five magnitudes in 240 to 540 years, he said, an unprecedented speed for this kind of ecological change. Past mass extinctions unfolded in geologic time over the course of thousands of years. The calamitous Great Dying at the end of the Permian period took about 6,000 centuries as the supercontinent called Pangaea coalesced, disrupting ocean currents and raising global temperatures, and lava oozed out of vast volcanic regions in the Siberian traps, poisoning the air and seas with clouds of toxic gases. For a mass extinction to happen fast enough to be perceived in human lifetime is unheard of. In terms of scale, we are now living through one of those brief, rare episodes in Earth history where the biological framework of life is dismantled. One person wrote in a study, an analysis for The Guardian, that none of the familiar horsemen of planetary change, massive volcanic outbursts to choke the atmosphere and poison the seeds, the mayhem caused by major asteroid impact, the wrenching effect of rapid climate change, have factored into the current crisis. The effects of current climate change are still in their early stages, he wrote, and can't yet be blamed for species loss. Instead, the deaths we are now seeing are all due to pollution, predation, and habitat change from one species, humans. Still, researchers say it's possible to avert their gloomy predictions. They give us about a generation to make the changes needed to slow the rate of species loss. We have the potential of inflicting a mass extinction episode which has been unparalleled for 65 million years, co-authored Geraldo Caballos told CNN. But I'm optimistic in the sense that humans react in the past, that we've been able to make quantum leaps and work together to solve our problems. So the next thing we have here is it's from commondreams.org, and it's titled, Over 15,000 Scientists Just Issued a Second Notice to Humanity. Can we listen now? I don't know. Can we, folks? Do you think we can? Do you think anybody really gives a damn? I really have to wonder. I really have to wonder sometimes, even myself, you know. In many ways, we feel like we're locked in. We have no choice, you know. many Americans, it's like I have no choice. I have to drive my car to work. I have to pollute in order to get to work. I have to work. And I work in a factory which makes plastic bags. Well, that pollutes too, but I have to work. And furthermore, we need the plastic bags. We need the cars. We need all the things that we have created. And I think a big part of the whole imbalance is, and it talks about pollution being one of the biggest things. I think that the pollution comes from digging things up from the underside of the skin of the apple. All right, if you look at the earth as a big apple and the ecosystem as a skin on the apple, as long as you use resources from the skin, then everything stays in balance. But as soon as you start pulling stuff up from underneath the skin, i.e. hydrocarbons, radioactive stuff, other chemicals, all of the quote-unquote pollution that we have was mined and pulled out of the ground. If it wasn't found just floating around, you got to drill for oil. There might be some places where it bubbles to the surface, but pretty much you got to drill for it. You got to dig for the other minerals that we use. And it is a bounty. It indeed is a bounty, but as soon as you start mining them and getting them out of the ground, then you're going to throw the balance of everything else out. And I think this mass extinction is an example of that, of a fundamental imbalance on the planetary level. And it could end us as a species. There probably will be, because of our technology, some humans that God only knows what kind of Blade Runner-esque future we have in line for us, where there is no sun, it's just hazy clouds all the time, because we never did slow down on our carbon emissions. And so basically if we quit solar radiation management, well, the temperature would rebound so high it would be ridiculous. It would turn into a literal greenhouse with all the greenhouse gases that we've trapped in the lower atmosphere. How's that? That's just silly. It is silly, folks. So let's go back to common dreams here. Over 15,000 scientists just issued a second notice to humanity. Can we listen now? Reassuring warnings issued 25 years ago. The second notice to humanity warns of widespread misery and catastrophic biodiversity loss, unless business as usual is upended. Over 15,000 scientists, hailing from more than 180 countries, just issued a dire warning to humanity. Time is running out to stop business as usual, as threats from rising greenhouse gases to biodiversity loss are pushing the biosphere literally to the brink. The new warning was published Monday in the International Journal of Science, and the date on this article is November 15th of last year. And it was published in that Journal of Bioscience and marks an update to the world scientists' warnings to humanity issued by nearly 1,700 scientists 25 years ago. The 1992 plea, which said Earth was on track to be irretrievably mutilated, barring fundamental change, however, was highly and largely unheeded. Some people might be tempted to dismiss this evidence and think we are just being alarmists, said William Ripple, distinguished professor of the College of Forestry at the Oregon State University and lead author of the new warning. Scientists are in the business of analyzing data and looking at the long-term consequences. Those who signed this second warning aren't just raising a false alarm. They are acknowledging the obvious signs that we are heading down an unsustainable path. The new statement, A Second Notice Humanity, does acknowledge that there have been some positive steps forward, such as a drop in ozone depleters and advancements in reducing hunger since 1992. But, by and large, humanity has done a horrible job of making progress. In fact, key environmental threats that demanded urgent attention a quarter of a century ago are even worse now. Among the especially troubling trends, they write, are rising greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, agricultural production, and the sixth mass extinction event that is now underway. Taking a numerical look at how some of the threats have grown since 1992, the scientists note that there has been a 26.1% loss in fresh water available per capita, a 75.3% increase in the number of dead zones, a 62.1% increase in the CO2 emissions per year, and a 35.5% rise in the human population. By failing to adequately limit the population growth, reassess the role of an economy rooted in growth, reduce greenhouse gases, incentivize renewable energy, protect habitat restoration, ecosystems, curb pollution, halt deforestation, and constrain invasive alien species, humanity is not taking the urgent steps needed to safeguard our imperiled biosphere, they wrote. Among the steps that could be taken to prevent catastrophe are promoting plant-based diets, reducing wealth inequality, stopping conversions of forests and grasslands, government intervention to rein in biodiversity loss via poaching and illicit trade, and massively adopting renewable energy sources while phasing out fossil fuel subsidies. Taking such actions, they conclude, are necessary to avert widespread misery and catastrophic biodiversity loss. Soon it will be too late to shift course away from our falling trajectory, and time is running out. The goal of the paper, said Ripple, is to ignite a widespread public debate about the global environment and climate. And this is the actual study. I got it up on its academic.oup.com bioscience/bioscience. So yeah, we are killing our planet big time. Hugely. I found this wonderful chart here. Ozone depleters have gone way down. Freshwater resources per capita have gone way down. Wow. Vertebrate species abundance has gone 40% of what we had in 1970. Total forest in the billions of hectares was 4.1, and now we're down at 4. Dead zones, the number of affected regions in the ocean has gone up astronomically. CO2 emissions have gone up astronomically, and temperature change has gone right along with it by 1.75 of a degree. And the population is growing at an exponential rate as well. Not quite exponential. It's like at a 45-degree curve. So this is what we got here, folks. We've got species loss. We've got pollution. We've got upcoming hideous, filthy nuclear pollution. You know, things that you and I aren't even thinking about. You know, we're thinking about, for instance, San Onofre, for instance. Everybody's, we need to get this stuff out of here. Well, yeah, we need to get this stuff out of here, but where's it going to go? Who's going to take it? And how can you keep it safe for, 30,000 years? 30,000 years ago, we were in the middle of the last great ice age. Okay. There was literal shelves of ice over most of North America. That's how long geologically it takes just for some of the isotopes we're at. That doesn't get rid of uranium or plutonium. You got a long time to go for that. So all these used fuel bundles, and they're sitting there, and it's like, yeah, it's a 24,000 year half-life. So we're going to call it 30,000 years. And we're going to put it in a 100-year solution. Can you give me that? Well, we hope. But bottom line is, I don't know, because I'll be dead. Okay. And that's where most of humanity is going. It's like, I don't know, because I'll be dead. I'll get my little bit of sunshine and blue skies here before I go out. Too bad about those other future generations of not only humans, but animals and plants as well. How is it that in 2 generations, humanity has created the 6th mass extinction on this planet? I mean, since we started getting, let's call it the beginning of the 1900s, so that's 100 years. In a century, we've done 10,000 years worth of damage, and there's only more of us now. So what's going to happen in the next century, folks? How are we going to even be here in the next century? I mean, that's the saddest and scariest part of it. Are we just fooling ourselves at this point? Are we just basically rolling along with the flow and saying, well, my life is good, and I reckon I may have great grandkids, but I'll never know it. I'll be good and dead then. And so it's this whole I'll be good and dead then, therefore it's not my problem attitude, versus the, oh my God, what have I wrought, and how can I solve this problem? Under all as a top priority. How irresponsible is that? How can we call ourselves enlightened and wise? We really can't, folks.